I knew it was going to be another night of silence before I even stepped through the bedroom door. It was the way Emily stood at the sink, rigid posture, eyes locked on the mirror, mouth foaming lightly as she brushed her teeth with that slow, practiced rhythm. That rhythm had become familiar, not in the comforting way routines usually are, but in the kind that stings because you know what comes next. She didn't glance at me, didn't offer a smile. She wore that same oversized gray sleep shirt, the one with the tiny hole at the hem just beneath her right shoulder, the one she always reached for when she wanted to send a silent message, "Don't bother." I stepped in quietly, boots echoing faintly against the hardwood, hoping maybe, stupidly, that tonight might be different, that maybe she'd turn, flash me that crooked grin she used to give when we were first married, the one that always made me forget what kind of day I'd had. But she didn't. Instead, she spit into the sink, rinsed with a mouthful of water, and wiped her mouth with the same beige towel hanging from the rack. She moved like a machine, efficient, detached, done. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," she replied without turning. Her voice was flat, barely above a whisper. I sat down at the edge of the bed, untying my boots with deliberate slowness, like dragging out the motions could somehow delay the ache I knew was coming. Maybe she was tired. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe. That word had started to taste like rust in my mouth. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake off the cold, but it wasn't the kind a blanket could fix. It was the kind that seeped in through years, through nights like these, and settled into your bones. "You heading to bed?" I asked. She nodded, pulling her hair into a loose bun. "Yeah, I'm exhausted." It was always exhaustion now. Always. She didn't ask how my day was, didn't ask if I'd eaten. She just climbed into bed, turned off the lamp on her side, and pulled the blanket up to her chin like it was armor. I watched her from the other side of the bed, the way she curled inward, her back to me. We used to tangle our legs under those same sheets, used to whisper until sleep stole us. I used to reach for her, and she'd reach back. Now, if I so much as touched her shoulder, I'd feel her body stiffen like I'd startled her, and so I didn't. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow and uneven. The silence grew thick. I spoke again, because I had to, because if I didn't, I might disappear completely. "We haven't, in a while." She didn't answer. "I'm not talking about sex," I added quickly. "I mean, you, us." She exhaled, not a sigh, not quite. More like the sound a person makes when they're trying not to snap. "Jake, can we not do this tonight?" Her voice wasn't cruel. That would have hurt less. It was indifferent. I nodded, more to myself than to her. I stood, grabbed the clothes I'd left on the chair, folded them mechanically. "I'll go out for a drive," I muttered. "Okay." No protest. No, "Where are you going?" Not even a glance. I left the room with boots heavy against the floorboards, feeling like I'd just confessed something intimate and been met with a shrug. Down the hall, the walls seemed to press inward. Pictures of us from years ago still hung neatly, frozen in moments that didn't feel real anymore. Smiling on a beach, laughing over a campfire, her hand tucked in mine. That version of us felt like strangers who wore our faces. At the front door, I paused, keys in hand. I turned back once, half expecting, half hoping. She'd come after me, ask me to stay, whisper something, anything, to break the fog. But the hallway behind me was empty, except there she was, not Emily, Lena. Her younger sister stood barefoot in the doorway of the guest room, one of Emily's old t-shirts hanging off her shoulder, brushing just above her knees. Her hair was loose, slightly tousled, and her expression unreadable. "You okay?" she asked, voice low. I blinked, caught off guard. "Just needed air," I said. She nodded slowly, her arms crossing under her chest. Something in her gaze lingered. Curious, maybe concerned, but not pitying. For a second, the house didn't feel so empty. And for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. There was a time when Emily couldn't keep her hands off me. I used to joke that she fell in love with my terrible guitar playing and my overcooked spaghetti. She'd roll her eyes and say, "No, I fell in love with the way you never pretended to be anything you weren't." We met in college, sophomore year, intro to books. She was bold, beautiful, always raising her hand in class, always challenging the professor's hypotheticals. I was quiet, better with books than with people, always sitting 2 rows behind her just so I could watch her argue with the world. The first time she talked to me, she stole my pen. I found her leaning over my desk after class, scribbling something in her notebook. "Is that mine?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Borrowed. You can have it back if you promise not to drop out halfway through the semester, like half this class." I blinked. I wasn't planning on it. "Good," she said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable. "You look like someone who sees things, the kind of guy who notices the details everyone else misses." I think I fell in love with her that second. By senior year, we'd moved in together. By 25, we were married under a canopy of string lights in her aunt's backyard, with the cheapest wine and the loudest friends. For a while, we were magic. We used to dance in the kitchen after dinner, barefoot, careless. We had a dumb inside joke where we'd hum elevator music during car rides, pretending we were trapped in some posh hotel lobby. We never went to sleep angry. We kissed like teenagers. She used to wake me up at 2 a.m. just to tell me about a dream she'd had. Then the world happened. Jobs, bills, obligations, expectations. Emily started working longer hours, first because she wanted to get ahead, then because she couldn't afford not to. I picked up freelance gigs on top of my full-time position just to keep us afloat when her company downsized. We stopped traveling, stopped staying up late watching movies we'd seen 100 times. Somewhere in between deadlines and dishes, we lost the thread. Love became scheduling. Intimacy became negotiation. I started asking if it was okay to touch her. And even when she said yes, it felt like I was trespassing. I don't remember the exact night it changed. Maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe it was like standing knee-deep in rising water, never noticing how high it's gotten until it touches your chest, and suddenly you can't breathe. She used to pull me into her when I passed by. Now she didn't flinch when I didn't say goodbye. One night, about 4 months ago, I reached across the sheets and placed my hand on her hip, gently, questioningly. She shifted away in her sleep, or maybe she was awake. I never asked. And then came Lena. She arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of books, and eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to sleep. "Just for a week," Emily told me the morning she moved in. "She broke up with that tech guy in Portland. Total asshole. She's a mess." Lena had always been the fun sister. Loud, impulsive, the kind of woman who dyed her hair purple one month and buzzed half of it off the next. She was chaos in eyeliner and combat boots. But when she showed up this time, she was quiet, worn down. The spark in her was still there, buried under the wreckage of something she wasn't ready to talk about. I gave her the guest room, made her coffee the next morning, and said, "No pressure to talk about it." She gave me a tired smile. "Thanks, Jake." Emily, on the other hand, barely looked up from her phone. She was already dressed for work, blazer sharp, lipstick perfect. "You'll be okay here?" she asked Lena, adjusting the collar of her coat. "Sure," Lena replied. "Cool. I've got that meeting this morning. Don't wait for me for dinner." And just like that, she was gone. The silence that followed felt too loud for 3 people. At first, I stayed out of Lena's way, let her sleep in, gave her space, but she kept showing up. In the kitchen when I was making breakfast, in the living room when I was pretending to work, and she started to ask questions no one had asked me in years. "Do you still play guitar? Why don't you laugh anymore? Do you and Emily even eat dinner together?" I didn't know how to answer, and she never pushed. She just stayed, present, listening. It's strange how noticeable care becomes when you've been starved of it. One evening I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken and roasted vegetables. Emily ate upstairs, said she had calls. Lena joined me at the table. "This is good," she said after the first bite. I nodded. "Thanks." She tilted her head. "Do you always cook for someone who won't show up?" I blinked. "She's busy." "You don't have to defend her," Lena said gently. "I wanted to. I really did. But the truth was, I didn't know how anymore." That night, I walked past our bedroom, and through the crack in the door, I saw Emily scrolling her phone with her back to the hallway light. I didn't say goodnight. Neither did she. I slept on the couch, for no reason other than it felt easier. At some point during the night, I heard quiet steps, the soft creak of the stairs. Lena appeared in the darkened living room, blanket in hand, voice soft as cotton. "Couldn't sleep," she whispered. "Me neither." She sat at the far end of the couch. We didn't speak again that night, but the silence between us felt different than the one upstairs. This one had weight, warmth, possibility, and that terrified me. I lost count of how many nights I told myself this would be the one where she turns toward me instead of away, the one where she remembers we used to be something worth holding on to. But each night ended the same, a quiet click of the lamp switch, the soft slide of fabric as she curled into herself, and silence. Always silence. I stopped reaching out eventually, not out of spite, out of self-preservation. There's only so many times a man can offer his hand into darkness without wondering if he still has a hand at all. But some nights, I still tried. This one started like the rest. Dinner alone. Emily said she'd grab something at work. She came home late, her blazer still crisp, face unreadable. In the bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to her move around in the bathroom. I looked down at my hands. They were folded, nervous. They didn't used to be. When she finally came out, she didn't speak, just climbed into bed and reached for her phone. I watched the glow of the screen light up her face, painting her in artificial blues. I couldn't see any trace of the girl who once laughed until she snorted at a dumb movie in our first apartment. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Em," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "I miss you." The words sat in the air, heavy and trembling. I didn't say it to guilt her. I said it because it had grown too big inside me to hold in anymore. After a pause, she sighed. Not frustrated, just tired. "I'm really exhausted, Jake." "I know," I replied, "but it's not just tonight. It hasn't been just tonight for a long time." She finally looked at me, a glance, short and fleeting. "I don't have the energy for this right now." That was it. Not anger, not tears, just that. She turned off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room, her back to me, a wall I could never seem to climb. I sat there for a few more seconds, the kind that stretch and distort time, and then stood. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there anymore. Downstairs, the air felt different. Not warmer, not safer, just less oppressive. I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack, keys from the bowl, and headed toward the door. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, careful. "Jake?" Her voice stopped me. Lena. She was standing at the base of the stairs, her hair loosely tied, sleeves of her hoodie pushed up to her elbows. Her eyes held none of Emily's distance. They looked right through me, straight into the ache. "You okay?" she asked, stepping closer. I laughed bitterly. "That depends on how you define okay." She leaned against the wall near the entryway, arms folded, eyes locked on mine. "You going somewhere?" "Just out. Needed air." She tilted her head. "You always drive when you're sad?" I shrugged. "Sometimes it helps." "Sometimes," she echoed, then paused. "Sometimes it just feels like running." I looked at her. "Maybe I am." She said nothing for a moment, then, "Are you running from her, or from how empty it feels to keep trying?" The question sliced deeper than I expected. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, slow, not threatening, just present. "I hear you walk past my door some nights," she said. "Your footsteps. Heavy, like you're carrying something too big for one person." "I don't want to burden you," I muttered. You're not. I shook my head, trying to smile. You shouldn't be in the middle of this. I'm not in anything, she said. I'm just here. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. That's when she said it. Quiet, gentle, almost apologetic. She doesn't see you anymore, does she? I exhaled. No, I said. She doesn't. Lena's gaze didn't waver. But you're still here, still trying, even when it hurts. She took another step closer. Jake, you're not invisible. I see you. The words cracked something in me. Not lust, not temptation, recognition. We stood there, the silence between us thick with everything we weren't saying. My hand brushed against the doorknob, fingers curling around cold metal like it could ground me. Go ahead, Lena said softly. Drive. But just know, you don't have to be alone to feel alone. I looked at her, throat tight. And then, the smallest thing, she reached out and touched my sleeve. Not my skin, just the fabric. A feather-light contact. It wasn't seductive. It wasn't desperate. It was human. It was real. She pulled her hand back almost immediately, as if afraid she'd gone too far. I'm sorry, she murmured. I know what it's like to sleep next to someone who forgets you're still alive. I closed my eyes, because she wasn't wrong, and I hated how much I understood. We didn't speak again. I turned and left, the door clicking behind me. But the sound of her voice, I see you, followed me all the way to the driver's seat. And for the first time in months, I wasn't just driving away from something. I was driving toward a question I wasn't ready to answer. Something shifted after that night. Nothing dramatic. No bold declarations. No stolen kisses in the dark. Just presence. Lena didn't avoid me, but she didn't seek me out either. She was simply there. In the kitchen making coffee when I came down in the morning. In the hallway with her arms full of laundry that wasn't hers. Humming softly under her breath like the house didn't ache in every corner. Emily, on the other hand, drifted farther. She left earlier, came home later. No questions, no updates. Only a routine so polished, it felt like we were co-workers sharing square footage. By the third night, I found myself staying downstairs after dinner. Emily had taken her plate and disappeared into the bedroom without a word. Lena lingered. She sat at the kitchen island, flipping lazily through a book, toes tapping against the stool's wooden rung. You want a glass of wine? She asked casually. I hesitated, then nodded. Sure. She poured two. No clink of glasses, no toasts, just two people sipping in parallel. We talked. About nothing at first. TV shows, childhood. Her brief, bitter stint at a startup. She made me laugh when I didn't think I remembered how. You know, she said, tilting her head, you used to laugh more. Like, really laugh. I raised a brow. When? When I'd visit. College breaks. You'd be in the kitchen with Emily, singing terrible renditions of pop songs while chopping onions. I smiled faintly. That feels like another life. Yeah, she said softly. It kinda does. She looked down at her glass, then back at me. Can I ask something? Sure. She studied my face for a beat too long. When did you stop feeling married? I opened my mouth, closed it, took a breath. I don't think there was a moment, I said. It was slow, quiet, like watching someone pack a suitcase one sock at a time until you realize the closet's empty. She nodded. Do you ever talk about it? She asked. Emily? No. If I try, she shuts down. Have you told her you feel invisible? I laughed once, hollow. I don't think she'd even hear it. Lena twirled the stem of her wine glass. You're not invisible, Jake. I looked at her. I see you, she added, voice low. The words hit harder this time, not because they were new, but because they were repeated. She'd said them before, but now they stayed. She stood then, stretched lightly, her shirt riding just enough to reveal the curve of her hip bone. Not deliberate, not careless, just human. I'm gonna crash, she said. Thanks for the wine. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Hey," she said, glancing back. "Maybe sometime we play a game?" "A game?" "Confession game, like in college. Just questions, no judgment. Truth only." I smiled. "Dangerous," she grinned. "Only if you lie." Then she disappeared into the hallway, her laughter trailing behind like perfume. I didn't sleep that night. It was the next night when the game started. Emily was working late, or at least that's what her text said. I didn't ask for more. I no longer had the right currency to buy explanations from her. I made dinner anyway. Pasta with roasted garlic, a recipe I hadn't cooked in years, for no reason. Maybe for myself. Maybe for the ghost of the man I used to be. Lena came into the kitchen barefoot, hoodie sleeves pushed past her elbows. "Smells like an Italian apartment," she said, leaning against the counter. "In a good way." "Hungry?" "Always." We ate at the island. No tablecloth, no candles, no pretense. Just two people with full plates and half-empty hearts. When the dishes were done and another bottle of wine cracked open, she said it. "So, you ready to play?" I raised a brow. "You're serious," she nodded. "Deadly." She poured us each another glass, then pulled out her phone and set a 10-minute timer. "What's that for?" "Pacing," she said, lips curving, "so neither of us overshares and scares the other away." I smirked. "Sounds fair?" She settled on the couch, tucking one leg under her, wine glass in hand like a truth serum. "I'll go first," she said. "Ever thought about cheating on Emily?" I nearly choked. Jesus, starting strong." "Truth only," she reminded, smiling without venom. I exhaled, looked at the ceiling. "I've noticed women," I said. "Hard not to when your wife treats you like you're the coat rack by the front door." But I never did anything. I kept hoping things would fix themselves." She nodded slowly. "That's sad." "Your turn," I said. Same question. Her smile dimmed. She swirled her wine, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah," she said. "Once, years ago, guy at work, he made me feel alive again." I looked at her, surprised. "But I didn't cross the line," she added. "Not because he didn't deserve my disloyalty, but because I didn't want to become someone I couldn't respect." There was a pause between us, thick and honest. "Okay," I said. "Next one's mine." She nodded. "What was your first impression of me?" Lena grinned. "Oh God." I leaned in. No dodging. She took a sip. "Honestly, I thought you were the hottest guy Emily had ever dated." I laughed. "Seriously?" She nodded. "I was 19. I had a ridiculous crush on you. Used to sit across the dinner table imagining you brushing my hand and how my skin would buzz for hours." That stopped me cold. "You're kidding." Her face was unreadable now. "Do I look like I'm kidding?" I stared at her, glass frozen halfway to my lips. We sat like that, suspended between a truth already confessed and a desire neither of us knew how to name yet. Her next question came softer. "Do you think she loves you?" I didn't answer right away. "I think she used 2, I said finally. "Now I'm not sure she even likes me." Lena's gaze dropped to her lap. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not your fault." "No," she said, "but I still hate seeing you disappear." I blinked. She looked up. Her eyes didn't sparkle now. They shimmered with something closer to ache. "I remember," she said, "when you'd sing badly in the car just to make Emily laugh. When you'd cook and pretend to be a fancy chef. You." Her voice cracked slightly. "She doesn't see that anymore, but I do." That broke something in me. Not because she wanted me, but because for once someone noticed I hadn't completely vanished. I set my glass down. She mirrored the motion, and then it happened. Slowly, silently. She reached out and took my hand. Not in seduction, in solidarity. Her palm was warm, steady. Our fingers curled together like they were picking up where something left off long ago. We didn't kiss, not yet. But we didn't have to. The moment was already loud with everything we were finally allowing ourselves to feel. We sat like that for what felt like an entire hour, two people barely touching yet completely entangled. Her thumb moved slowly over my knuckles, not in a way that demanded anything, but in a way that said, "I'm here. I see you. I haven't looked away." I wanted to speak, but words felt like noise in that moment. She was the first to breathe. A small exhale, so gentle I barely noticed. Then she shifted closer, just a few inches, but those inches held years. "You don't have to be afraid," she said quietly. I looked at her. "Of what?" "Of needing," she whispered. That word cut, because I did need, desperately, achingly, in a way I'd spent years trying to bury under patience and good intentions and loyalty that had become a quiet kind of martyrdom. "Lena," I said, my voice hoarse, "this can't happen." "I know. We shouldn't." "I know," she said again. But neither of us let go. She looked down at our hands, then up at me. Her voice softened into something barely above air. "But Jake, if this is wrong, why does it feel like breathing for the first time?" I closed my eyes. The room was still. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, her breath, steady, close. And then I did it. I leaned forward. Not much. Not like in the movies. No cinematic swell. Just enough. Enough to say I'm here too. Her lips met mine like a confession that had waited too long. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't rushed. It was trembling. Tender. A slow unraveling of restraint that had been stitched too tightly for too long. Her hand came to rest against my jaw, warm and shaking. I cupped the side of her neck, felt the thrum of her pulse beneath my fingertips. We pulled apart just slightly, foreheads almost touching, breath shared between us. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Lena shook her head. "Don't be. Not if it's true." I didn't answer, because it was. It was all true. Everything I'd buried, the loneliness, the hurt, the longing to be touched not out of duty, but out of want. It all poured into that kiss, and she hadn't flinched. She'd met it with her whole heart. She leaned in again. Her lips found mine, slower this time, less uncertain. Her fingers curled into my shirt, not to pull me closer, but to hold me steady. Like she understood I was shaking from the inside out. And I was. I felt like glass. But she held me like I wouldn't break. I don't remember who stood up first. Maybe her, maybe me. But somehow we were on our feet, then climbing the stairs. Not stumbling, not desperate. Just moving together. Deliberate, quiet, chosen. The guest room door clicked softly behind us. The hallway remained dark. The world remained asleep. But in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt awake. The room was quiet. Not with the hush of secrecy, but with the reverence of something fragile finally being held. The only light came from the hallway, slipping in through the crack beneath the door, soft and amber like the last sigh of a sunset. We stood in that glow, not speaking. Our breathing said enough. Lena stepped closer, her hands resting lightly at the hem of my shirt. She didn't pull, didn't ask. She simply looked at me, a question in her eyes, not for permission, but for presence. "Are you still here?" I nodded. She lifted my shirt, slow and careful, like she didn't want to startle the moment. Her fingers brushed my skin, and I swear I felt my chest expand for the first time in weeks. I reached for her in return, tracing the zipper of her hoodie, peeling it down with the same reverence one might unwrap something precious, not because it's rare, but because it's real. She let it fall from her shoulders. Beneath it, she wore a cotton tank top, soft from 100 washes, not designed to seduce, but to comfort. Somehow, it undid me more than any lace ever could. I touched her collarbone, a place most people forget to admire, and she shivered just slightly, her eyes closed. We moved to the bed, not rushed, not strategic. We didn't fall, we arrived. She climbed beneath the covers first, lifting the blanket like an invitation. I followed, and the world outside that room fell away. We didn't undress each other with hunger. We undressed like we were unburdening. Each piece of clothing was a layer of armor we no longer needed. When I finally saw her, all of her, I didn't think beautiful, though she was, I thought, honest. She didn't cover herself. She didn't shrink. She looked at me like she had nothing left to hide. Her body wasn't perfect. There was a faint scar on her left thigh, a tiny freckle beneath her ribs. Her stomach wasn't flat, and her skin held the memory of seasons. And I loved all of it, because none of it flinched from me. I kissed her shoulder first, then her jaw, then her mouth again, slow, drawn out, like we had all the time in the world. Her hands slid over my back, not grasping, but grounding me. Her legs curled gently around mine, and when I finally entered her, it felt less like penetration and more like return. We didn't speak. Words would have cheapened it. Our rhythm was slow, steady, not searching for climax, but for closeness. She gasped once, not in pleasure, not in pain, but in recognition. Her fingers found mine, lacing together, and she pressed our hands to the space just above her heart. I felt it. I felt her. Each movement between us carried something unspoken. Grief, tenderness, years of being unmet. But in that bed, there were no missed calls, no unanswered texts, no nights of turning away, only two people, bare in every sense, choosing to stay. When she came, it wasn't loud. She didn't cry out. She didn't arch. She simply let go, her body curling into mine, her breath catching like something had released inside her. She whispered my name, not with desperation, but with awe. Jake! And in that single syllable I heard what I'd been missing for so long. Not lust, not escape, but being wanted, truly, completely. I held her afterward. She lay half on my chest, her fingers drawing slow circles on my sternum. We didn't speak. There was nothing to explain, because nothing about it had been an accident. It had been a choice, and the quiet between us was no longer filled with absence. It was full of breath, of warmth, of finally being seen. I woke before the light did. The room was still cloaked in that pre-dawn gray, where everything feels soft and suspended, like the world itself is holding its breath. Lena was still curled into me, one of her legs draped across mine, her arm tucked under her cheek, lips parted slightly in sleep. Her breath was slow, measured, as if even her dreams were trying not to break the moment. I didn't move, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want the spell to break. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt calm. Not happy, not victorious, just alive. My hand rested gently on her back, rising and falling with every inhale. We were breathing together, same rhythm, same pace, and yet the weight of what we'd done hovered just above us, like morning mist waiting to burn off. I didn't feel guilt, not in the way I expected. I felt clarity, because last night hadn't been a mistake born of lust. It had been a mirror, held up to everything I'd been pretending not to feel for too long. Neglect, grief, the ache of being untouched, and now, Lena. Her presence, so quiet, so steady, had cracked something open inside me, not to break it, but to let something grow. She stirred slightly, her brow twitching as if sensing the shift in air. Then her eyes opened, sleepy, unmasked. She looked at me for a long moment, no panic, no regret, just awareness. "You're awake?" she said softly, voice still husky with sleep. I nodded. "Yeah." "Since when?" "A while." "Are you okay?" I thought about that, then nodded again. "I think so." She lifted her head slightly and pressed her lips to my chest. Not a kiss, not quite, more like a mark, a memory. Then she said, "We changed something, didn't we?" "Yes," I replied. She laid her head back down. "Do you wish we hadn't?" I didn't answer immediately. My fingers slid gently along her spine. "No," I said, "but I know it won't be easy now." "I know," she whispered. The moment lingered, thick with what hadn't yet arrived. The confrontation, the fallout, the unraveling of whatever was left upstairs. We both heard it at the same time. Footsteps, faint but real. Floorboards creaking overhead. Emily. Lena froze. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The weight of reality began to seep in under the door like cold air. The bathroom door opened. A cabinet creaked. Water ran. Lena sat up slowly, clutching the blanket to her chest. Her hair was tousled, lips parted, skin glowing with the heat of sleep and something more intimate. She looked back at me. Her face was calm, but her eyes were holding too much. "I should go," she whispered. I nodded, throat tight. She slipped from the bed, found her hoodie, and pulled it over her head, then padded barefoot to the door. Her hand hovered over the knob. She turned back one last time. "I don't want to be the reason your life explodes." I met her gaze. "My life already exploded," I said quietly. "You just happened to be there when the dust settled." She blinked, and for a moment I saw something raw in her. Then she opened the door and disappeared into the hallway, her silhouette swallowed by shadows. I sat there alone in the bed we'd shared. The sheets still held her warmth. My chest still held her touch. And though the sun hadn't yet risen, I knew nothing would be the same when it did. Emily didn't say anything that morning. She never did, really. But something in the way she poured her coffee told me she knew. Not everything, not yet, but enough. She didn't look at me when she entered the kitchen. Her heels clicked softly on the tile. Her blouse was crisp, her lipstick meticulous. The scent of citrus and control followed her like armor. I sat at the counter, nursing black coffee I didn't want, pretending to read something on my phone. When she reached for the fruit container in the fridge, she paused, just for a fraction of a second, long enough to notice the second coffee mug in the sink. The way the blanket on the couch was folded a little too neatly, a strand of dark hair on the back of the armrest that didn't match hers. She said nothing, but when she turned toward me, she looked for the first time in weeks, really looked, and her eyes, they didn't say, "I love you." They didn't even say, "I'm angry." They said, "I know." "Working late again tonight?" I asked after a beat. She sipped her coffee. "Probably. Don't wait up." Then she left. No kiss, no glance back, but the air in the house stayed charged, like static before a thunderstorm. That night, the storm finally broke. She was already home when I returned. The house was dim. The TV murmured something forgettable in the background. She sat on the couch with her legs crossed, phone in hand, a half-finished glass of wine beside her. She didn't look up. I dropped my keys louder than necessary. No reaction. I stepped into the living room, blocking her view of the screen. She blinked once, then looked at me. Not annoyed, not confused, just waiting. "You working late tomorrow?" I asked. "What?" I said, "Are you working late tomorrow?" Her shoulders tensed slightly. "Probably. Why?" "Because I don't remember the last time you touched me," I said. Her mouth parted, not to argue, to breathe. "What is this?" she asked. "Where is this coming from?" "From months," I said. "Months of sleeping next to someone who turns away every time I reach for her. Months of not tonight, and I'm tired. And silence so thick it's hard to breathe." She sat up straighter. Her phone slid to the table. "You're being dramatic." "No, Emily, I'm being honest." She laughed, dry, defensive. "So what? You want me to fake wanting sex just to keep you from sulking?" "This isn't about sex," I snapped. "It's about being seen, about being touched, like I'm more than a piece of furniture in this house." She folded her arms. "I've been stressed. Work is insane. You know that." "And I've been understanding," I said. "I've given you space. I haven't pushed. But space turns into neglect when no one checks if you're still standing there." Her face changed, just slightly. Then she asked, almost casually, "Is this about Lena?" I froze. "What?" "I see the way you look at her," she said. "The way you suddenly smile when she's in the room. Like you remember how." I took a step back, as if her words physically landed. "You think I'm—" I started, then stopped. "Aren't you?" she asked, voice sharp now. "God, Jake, she's just bored. She's needy, and you—" "Don't talk about her like that," I said quietly. She blinked, then stood. "You're defending her." "No," I said. "I'm defending myself. Because for the first time in years, someone actually saw me. Not as a husband, not as a chore, but as a man." Emily stared at me. Her eyes shone, but she didn't cry. "I didn't check out," she whispered. "I just stopped knowing what to say. And then it felt easier not to say anything at all." We stood in silence. Years of silence compressed into one living room, two people in a space between us that used to be filled with laughter. Then she said it, not with venom, not even with pain, just defeat. "I want a separation." I nodded. "Okay." Lena didn't come out of her room that night. She must have heard, maybe not the words, but the weight. The next morning she was gone before I came downstairs. No note, no text, just absence. By noon I found her in the backyard, sitting on the porch steps in a hoodie and leggings, hands curled around a mug that had gone cold. She looked up at me as I stepped out. "I heard," she said. I sat beside her, didn't speak. "I shouldn't have stayed last night," she added. "Yes, you should have," I said. She looked away. "I don't want to be the reason you become someone you can't recognize in the mirror." "You're not." She turned to me then, eyes sharp but tired. "Jake, I was there. I am here. But I need to know you chose it. Not just because you were hurt. Not just because she stopped looking at you." "I did choose it," I said. "Not in the beginning, but in that room, with you, I made a choice." Her breath hitched, then she stood. "I need to go. Just for a bit. Let things settle." I stood too. "Where?" "A friend's. Just a few days, maybe longer." I nodded, heart tightening. She stepped close, reached out, and placed her hand on my chest. Not over my heart, but next to it. "You're a good man, Jake," she said. "But even good men can lose themselves." Then she was gone, just like that. Emily, Lena, both ghosts now. One from neglect, the other from something too real to ignore. And I stood there, barefoot on the porch, coffee cooling in my hand, wondering how much of me was left to lose. The silence was different now. It wasn't the cold kind that settled between two people who've forgotten how to speak. It was the kind that came after something final, after the dust, after the burn. Emily had moved out 4 days ago. No drama, no slammed doors, no final screams in the hallway. She packed with the precision she brought to every aspect of her life. 3 neat suitcases, a laptop bag, and the perfume she never wore for me anymore. When she left, we didn't hug. We didn't even touch. We just stood in the foyer, neither knowing how to say goodbye to a decade that had stopped breathing years ago. "I don't hate you," she said. "I don't hate you either," I replied. And then she walked out, not with fury, but with emptiness. The next day I walked through the house like a stranger. Her perfume still lingered in the bathroom. Her robe still hung behind the door. Her name was still on the Wi-Fi, but the rooms were hollow now, not haunted, just clean. Like someone had swept out all the pretending and left space for something real. Lena didn't return. Not that day, not the one after. I didn't text her, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to know what was mine, and what had been built just to fill a void. It took 12 days. 12 slow, aching days of waking up alone, of cooking for one, of folding laundry that no longer carried her scent. Then, on the 13th evening, I got a text. "Are you around?" My fingers hovered over the screen, then typed 2 words. "Always." We met at the Overlook. Same one as before, same view, same breeze. She was already there, leaning against the railing, hair pulled back loosely, wearing a denim jacket and jeans that had faded from age, not fashion. She turned as I approached. Her smile was small, but it was real. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I wasn't sure you'd ask. We stood side by side, looking out over the water. The lake stretched like silver glass below us, the sky blooming with that faint peach tone that only comes just before it goes dark. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. Then softly she said, I've been afraid. I turned to her. Afraid of what? That what happened between us was just a reaction. Something born out of absence, not choice. It wasn't, I said. She looked at me, hard, honest, hopeful. I didn't come back to fix you, Jake, she said, or to replace her. I know. I came back because I choose you. The way she said it, quiet, simple, but deliberate, knocked the wind out of me more than any I love you ever could. I choose you, she repeated. Not because you're broken, not because you need saving, but because when I look at you, I see someone I don't want to look away from. The ache in my chest wasn't pain, it was something breaking open. I took a step closer. Choose you too, I whispered. Not to cover a scar, not to forget what hurt, but because when you left, the world stopped humming. Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't cry. We didn't kiss right away. We stood there, two people in the ruins of what came before, not asking for perfection, not even asking for a promise, just choosing. That night we drove back together. The house wasn't ours yet, but it didn't feel like someone else's anymore. She walked through the front door without hesitating, toed off her shoes, pulled her sleeves over her knuckles. I made tea. No wine this time. We sat in the living room. No music, no TV, just breathing the same air. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I replied. But I'm more tired of pretending I don't want something real. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. That was all. No sex, no new fire to replace the old one. Just stillness and two hearts that, for the first time in a long time, were finally beating in rhythm 6 weeks later. We still take it slow. She's still staying with a friend 3 nights a week. Space, she says. Healthy. I agree. But every Thursday, she brings her sketchbook and her favorite old hoodie, and I cook something new. We still talk. But we listen more. We argue. We get it wrong. We ask again. But we see each other. Not through the fog of obligation, but through the firelight of choice. And that has made all the difference. Because when someone whispers, I choose you, not in the dark, not in the aftermath, but in the stillness after the storm, it means they're not just there to rescue you from the ashes. They're there to build something with you from the beginning.